So I was up in Sacramento to testify against a bill, SB 10, which would allow criminals in the Black and Hispanic communities to get out of jail without having to post a bail. And these Democrats are claiming to be pushing this bill because they said white people can afford to pay to get their folks out of jail, but Black people have to put up their homes, the Hispanics. And that's not fair. Isn't that amazing? And so I want you to know that if this bill passes, it means that if someone in your community, whether it's a drug dealer, a rapist, a robbery, or whatever it might be, and they go to jail, they can get out and wait for a trial without having to post a bail. And this is going to put everybody's lives at risk. You're not going to have any witnesses go forward and testify because they're going to be afraid to, knowing that the criminals will be getting out of jail. They want to let these people out on their own and really put the bail bonds out of business. But they want to do it because they say that there's too much policing and it's racism and it's not fair to the Blacks that they have to put their homes up for as bail to make sure that the criminals show up for their trial or hearing, while the white people can afford, the rich white people, they say, can afford to pay money. Isn't that crazy? So they're just dumping on the Black folks and the Hispanics, and they don't have sense enough to care about it because they think this is love because the people use the word racist, the Democrats do. It's mind-blowing. Isn't that amazing? And they say they are doing it because they love Black people and Hispanics. They are doing it because they want the votes. This is what this is all about, putting Blacks and Hispanic lives and innocents' lives at risk just to get the vote. That's what this is all about.
And the bottom line, I think, is this. We're talking about justice. We're talking about the need to constantly be vigilant, to continue to reinvent and to create the newest tools available to make sure that people who are dealt with in the justice system are dealt with fairly, honorably, are not treated in a different manner because of the color of their skin or the size of their wallet. This is America. This is what this place is about. Did the bail system work some years ago? I don't know. Bail schedules were a lot less. It cost a few $100s to bail out. There's a number of reasons why they've changed. The question before us, before this committee, before this legislature, is do we have a better path forward in how we treat our people? Do we administer justice? And the bottom line is, with the best minds available, does it upset the apple cart to some extent as to how business has been done? Of course it does. There's all sorts of examples throughout society where changes occur, and this is something for the better, something which is the highest purpose of any purpose, which is justice, making sure that the creed of this country and what we stand for goes to the greatest lengths to protect folks at every income level, under every circumstance. While
living behind a gated fence or gated wall with security, he is sponsoring a bill that will let criminals, suspects, out of jail without having to post a bail. SB 10. They want to let criminals out of jail without having to post a bail. Isn't that amazing? And they say that the reason they want to do it is because it's unfair that the rich and the whites get out while Blacks and Hispanic single mothers and grandmothers go hungry. And they claim that these people are going hungry to get their young people out because they are over-policed. How can you be over-policed?
I'm just expressing my deep concerns because at the end of the day, with all due respect to the gentleman who spoke, in my community where I live among Black and brown people, at my house, in my neighbors, there's some very real and immediate concerns because the way the bail system works, if you're over-policed in a community like mine and you're picked up and a officer charges you with a crime and you're a good working individual trying to get to work and you come up with thousands of dollars to get out, even for a crime you're never charged with, you lose, as we always say, your grandmother's bank account, basically. And that never gets returned. There is something emphatically wrong with the way that bail works in communities like mine that are over-policed, and the assumption that the people who are picked up on charges, and I know I'm speaking to the choir, but, are guilty of those is, often, sometimes they're guilty of lesser charges, sometimes they're not guilty of anything, sometimes they're never charged, and that's a real problem.
Isn't that amazing? So they're claiming that in the black community that the mothers cannot afford to get their sons and daughters out of jail, so they have to post bail, while the rich can afford to just pay to get their folks out. They had one Hispanic woman go up and testify in favor of it, and she said she had committed some kind of crime, went to jail, and it was hard on her family. Her grandmother had to put up her home to bail her out, and it was just so hard. And it was hard for her because she had to see her grandparents suffer. I'm like, is this woman crazy? You do the crime, you do the time. Commit the crime, do the time. No one's feeling sorry for you, stupid woman.
My name is Melody, and I'm here from San Diego to speak about my personal experience with the money bail system and how it impacted my life for several years. About 11 years ago, I did something really stupid, and I ended up being arrested. And this was my first and only offense. At the time, I was a full-time student. I worked for the county of San Diego. I lived with my grandparents who had been raising me. People can only imagine what it's like to sit in jail, but for me, the reality of this was much more terrifying than I could ever have imagined. I would call home every hour begging for someone to do something. So being a mother myself now, I can understand what my grandparents felt. Understandably, they would have done whatever they could in their power to get me back home. My grandparents at the time were on a fixed income, living paycheck to paycheck. So for our family, there were no savings. When we heard that the only way for me to get out was a $50,000 bail, we all shared the same reaction. We were all sick to our stomachs because we knew there was no way that we could come up with that kind of money. So we worked with the bail bonds companies immediately. The down payment, of course, was more than what my grandparents could afford. So they had to use credit and also borrow from friends to do so. And then they promised to pay a monthly payment that they knew wasn't even close to fitting into their budget. At the end of my court sentencing, I was sentenced community service hours and 3 years probation. After completing this debt, I thought, I was finally free of the nightmare I had caused. Little did I know that the bail bondsman debt would continue for years. My grandparents and I struggled to make these huge payments each month so other bills of ours started going delinquent. There was times I would see my grandparents leave to the grocery store with a calculator, and I would overhear them saying, well, we'll just get what we can, and then, well, that's it. So understandably, my heart broke watching my grandma write these huge checks to the bail bonds companies every time she did. During this time, very often I would feel like there was no light at the end of the tunnel. Even the phone ringing at our house became a stressful event because 9 out of 10 times it was the bail bonds calling to collect payment that we just didn't have. It took me years to regain my freedom from this. I now own my own business, and even at 32 years old, I still see some of the negative hits on my credit from this time in my life. But the thought of what could have happened had I not been able to bail out still scares me because I've seen so many other women like myself in court that were still in custody. And I know the only difference between my luck and theirs was that my family was able to come up with some money. What I went through was very devastating, but I honestly feel that the worst punishment ended up being the bail debt.
How about not having children out of wedlock? How about not committing the crimes? How about those things? It was one of the dumbest things I ever heard. And some black woman, same kind of thing. And then they had a truckload of people come up to the mic just to say their name, the organization they're from or with, and they support the bill, right? That's going to let the criminals out without bail. And if you are a victim of the crime, they were calling the criminals victims. Isn't that amazing? And so if you are victimized, you're not going to go and testify because the criminals walking around in the neighborhood. They had a bunch of union members, just blacks and Hispanics and others, just looked like garbage people. They were just dirty people. And they had drag queens, men that was acting like women, lesbians that was dressed like men, Black Lives Matter. They just had a truckload of people, busload of people going up and testifying in support of this thing. Just the scum of the earth. It looked like, and I used to work for the union, so I know how they operate. They just get these people who are union members and tell them anything, busload them to these hearings, and they go in support of their own neighborhood, the destruction of their own neighborhoods, not even realizing what they're supporting. I'm sitting there watching these people go up and say they are in support of a bill that's going to allow the criminals to just go free until they go to court. How many people show up to court, especially if you don't have a bail and you're not worried about mama losing her house? You're not going to show up to court? And so I asked two of the black women that went up and said, my name is whatever, and I'm with the union and I support the bill. So I asked them, did you know that this bill is going to allow the criminals out of jail until they're hearing? So they're going to go back into your community and rape you some more? And they said, no, that's not true. That's not what the bill is about. They didn't even know what the bill was about. They did not know what the bill was about. And I understand that because the union don't tell them the truth about it, and they don't have sense enough to examine it for themselves. And so the union said, hey, here's a free ride up to Sacramento at the Capitol. You're going to testify in front of the Senate or some stupid committee. They're like happy. They just go and do it. It is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. When that 32-year-old woman said she did something stupid 11 years ago, and now her grandparents can't buy a grocery, I'm like, they don't deserve to eat if they're going to put their house up for your stupid self. This is so crazy. There were men dressed like women, and there were women dressed like men. They all testified in front of this committee there in favor of SB 10. I want black people to know, if you want to know which way to go with these bills and things like that, and you don't feel like reading, I understand. Black people don't like to read. And so I do understand. Just look at the people who are in support of it. If the radical homosexuals are in support of it, if the unions are in support of it, if the Democrats are in support of it, if the drag queens, better known as, that's a new name, what do they call them? Transgenders. If they're in support of it, just know you should not be for it. You should not be for the bill. All right? Because they're not supporting you. They're supporting themselves, using you, black people. And I know you don't like to read. I understand. We're just not into reading. If they don't put it on TV, we won't know about it or rap about it. If they don't put it in music or TV, we'll just go with what they tell us without trying to figure it out. I understand. But black folks, if this bill passed, you are in some serious trouble. So when it was my time to speak, I said that this guy, Hirschberg, what's his name, James? I said Hirschberg and the folks who are sponsoring this bill hate black people. I said it really loud. And a roar just went through the building. My name is Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson, and I am founder and president of BOND, the Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny. And our purpose is to rebuild the family by rebuilding the man. We're a national organization. I'm also a radio and talk show host. I work with black men and women and children all the time for the last 27 years. I live in a community. And to come up with SB 10 is absolutely insane. And I do want to say first that Senator Hirschberg and the sponsors of this bill hate black people. They hate black women. They hate black children because these people are not going to live. These people are not going to live in these communities.
Stick with the merits of the bill, please.
All right. The sponsors of these bills, of this bill, do not live in those communities. There are innocent black mothers and children who are dying for help. They are overpopulated by criminals who are already in their community. I'm working with a woman right now. Her daughter was raped, a black single mother. Her daughter was raped. Her house has been robbed. The criminals are walking down the neighborhood, and they are afraid to report it to the police because they know that these criminals are going to come after them because they're in and out of jail already. And to get rid of the bond says that you, sir, don't respect black people. You don't live in those communities.
I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to cut you off.
I want to say
you off right now. One, because you don't have a whole lot of time. They have 4 minutes left. I want to make sure the others, could you wrap up in 15 seconds right now?
Our community are already afraid to report criminals. Criminal activity is out of control. Black women are being robbed, murdered, and raped every day. I have a sister who was raped.
Okay.
She won't report it.
Okay,
because the criminals are on the street.
Is that your final statement?
Get rid of the bail.
Okay, thank you.
Without accountability.
Thank you, sir.
Insane, and we cannot.
Thank you, sir.
And I beg you that doesn't care. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Public Safety Committee,
You don't care, sir.
my name is...
Wait. If you make another sound, I'll have you removed.
I'm fine. This is insane.
Okay. Let other people speak.
But I told him that he didn't like black people. All hell broke loose. It was crazy. Everybody was all nicey. And when I went up to give my testimony against the bill, all hell broke. There was one white guy sitting there, one of the judges sitting there, and I thought he was going to fall off the bench. Robert Hirschberg. The one thing I noticed about Democrats, they don't want it to be known that they hate black people, but they're constantly accusing white Republicans of so-called racism. I didn't even use the word racism because I know racism doesn't exist, but hatred does. And when I said that, they turned my mic off. They were yelling and screaming at me, and I was having a good time. I was loving it. There's nothing like telling the truth to Democrats and seeing them go nuts. I would call my representatives if I were you to say I'm against SB 10, which would allow criminals back into the communities waiting for their hearing without a bail bond. Without a bail. Isn't that amazing? And just imagine, these people are going to sell drugs, they're drug dealers, they are rapists, murderers, robbers. They're going to get out of jail right back into the community, in the black community, while these folks live behind major walls where you can't get in. They don't care about and black people are so dumb. Not all, but most. They have no idea. Long as the Democrat, the title Democrat is attached to it, and look like the Democrat care about them because they use words like racism and poor people and police. That's all they need to say. So Representative Hirschberg is from the Van Nuys areas, San Fernando Valley. He represents those areas, a Democrat, Robert Hirschberg. So if you're not for getting rid of the bail bonds and letting these people run wild until they go to court, they can commit a crime. Think about that. They can commit a crime, but they don't. They go to jail, but they let them right out, and they have to wait for their hearing in the community where they are committing the crimes. The blacks and Hispanics communities. Amazing. All for the votes. And one thing I noticed that Republicans are so scared. The other ones who were testifying against the bill, they were just reading off the stats. the Republicans are afraid, and no wonder they don't win anything because they're trying to appease the media and the Democrats. They just do anything that they can do to appease black people. It's amazing what's going to happen in the black and Hispanic community. The criminals who will be roaming the streets free. They're not worried about mama lose her house, so they're going to go nuts. Because the average criminal, at least the blacks and Hispanics, they love mama, so they might show up for court because they don't want mama to lose her house. But now that they know mama is not going to lose her house, they're not going to care. They're not going to show up for a trial. And then the witnesses are not going to testify because the criminal right on the same block in some cases. This is so insane. And so many people, union workers and others, were there to say they supported this bill. While the whites the Democratic whites and blacks who wrote up this bill, who sponsored this bill, they're living behind gated communities. They have guns. They have security guards. You can't even get in those communities. I don't know. I wish you could have seen some of the folks who were for it. Just dirty people. Look like they're just in the world and don't even know it. They're just here. And whatever the world tells them, okay. As long as you say racism, you mention racist, and you mention the police, we are okay with it. Isn't that amazing? How did the world get so bad? Talk about the fallen state. They have fallen beyond the fallen state. They had men dressed like women who were testifying for the bill, and women dressed like men who were testifying for the bill. Now, you know something is wrong. If you got those kind of people for it, go the other way. Blacks and Hispanics for the bill. And then you had the folks who were against the bill, dressed nice, good-looking folks, clean, decent people. Looked like the light of the world. It was just absolutely mind-blowing. It was more than a notion. Dwayne Dog Chapman, the dog, and his wife Beth are really pushing against this bill. So they asked me, they told me about it, really introduced it to me and asked me would I testify, however I felt about it. I'm like, yeah, I go. We got to fight for our country. Let's go to the Baba Gocha guy out of Los Angeles.
I'm like almost speechless. That is an insane bill. I don't know what they're going to come up with next, but have they thought ahead that, okay, while they're out, waiting for trial, out on without bail, and they commit another crime, are they going to stay without bail? What do they finally have to do to get these people attention? It's amazing to me, because these aren't, and they compare them to richer people who get out, on bail. Those richer people aren't committing violent crimes. They're committing different, white-collar crimes, but they're comparing a white-collar criminal to a violent criminal, robbery, rape, murder, and they're letting these people out without bail.
They don't care. They don't. If blacks and Hispanics can't afford to get out of jail, don't commit the crimes. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have. If you can't afford, it's not about that, though. They don't care. These Democrats literally don't care because they live behind gated communities. Maxine Waters doesn't live in those areas. She doesn't have to worry about that. She's not a representative, a state representative, but these people don't care. They just use blacks and Hispanics. They appease them. They use the word racism. The unions are using blacks and Hispanics. It's about money and power. SB, which is the Senate Bill 10, is going to destroy the black and Hispanic community. But they don't care as long as they show up at the polls.
Yeah, there's going to be nothing left of these communities. I mean, it's going to be total takeover. The police are going to pull back because they see their efforts are for nothing. They're going to see these guys back on the street the next day.
Yeah.
That's going to destroy police morale, and you're going to have a Mexico situation here real quick.
That's right. With the gangs and things like that are already happening, it's just going to be a mess, man. It's going to be wickedness.